Isn't an easy task. I was getting sick just sitting down in the helicopter. We paid a visit, though, to Guam's very own Airborne Search and Rescue Squadron. Meet the men and women of HC-5.
HC-5 duty officer, Lieutenant Roden speaking. This is non-secure line. May I help you, sir?
They call themselves the Providers. These are the men and women of HC-5, the Navy's only Guam-based helicopter squadron. Responding to a search and rescue request is but one of their functions. In fact, their primary mission is twofold. One, they carry supplies between store ships and other ships. Vertical replenishment, they call it. Two, and probably a bit more glamorous, they serve as an airborne search and rescue detachment. HC-5 is headed by 19-year Navy veteran Commander Ken O'Bannon. He says more and more the Navy is turning to helicopters in its overall activities. His particular command utilizes the H-46.
We can lift about 4,000 to 6,000 pounds externally, carry 15 to 20 passengers depending on the configuration. Generally fly for about 2 hours. Our mission cover maximum speeds about 130 to 145 knots, depending on conditions. It's a pretty capable helicopter. Main factors is it has no constraints because of wind, so it makes us pretty versatile, especially at sea.
Needless to say, operating helicopters is a bit different from your average naval duties, and consequently, the training is a bit more extensive.
Crew members go through their initial training, which can last about 18 months. Then they go through what we would call a readiness squadron, where that lasts for the new people about 6 months, for the second tour people about 2.5 to 3 months. Before they come here, they take that training in San Diego just to get them used to the H-46 helicopter. Once we get them here, we put them through maybe about 6 to 8 flights for the co-pilots. Quite an extensive program for the aircraft commanders, or the people in charge out there. The air crewmen and SAR swimmers go through a similar pipeline. They also have to go through a SAR swimming school where they learn rescue and swimming techniques. That adds about an additional month to them. So really the pilots are quite well trained, probably invest about almost 2 years of training by the time they get to us.
All that training, of course, is useful to the squadron and its day-to-day activities, but it is perhaps most important during search and rescue operations.
It's usually extremely demanding, especially if it were to be done in a nighttime scenario. Dealing with anything over water, it is very, very difficult to see, and sometimes you can fly right over a survivor numerous times and not find them. You can and then trying to pick them out of a small boat with the mast, swaying back and forth and trying not to get caught. It's just extremely demanding. You're working very hard, sweating profusely, getting pretty excited.
Indeed, search and rescue is not only physically taxing, but emotionally taxing as well. There is anxiety, fatigue, apprehension, and frustration.
Everybody wants to find a person. That's the main thing. Your adrenaline is going. You're real excited because you want to be the one to find this person out there, and you know somebody's life is on the line, and you get very excited. I'd say it doesn't take very long at all to get very frustrated, because especially in an overwater environment where you have waves and white caps, and there might be just one little head bobbing. There's lots of trash and garbage out there at sea that we never even realize until you're looking for something, and anything that anybody's thrown out of their boat. can be mistaken for some type of survivor. So you get very quickly frustrated in a way. They never give up, but your constant emotions are really torn, I think.
Not an easy job by any standard, but you get the feeling that those involved wouldn't have it any other way. It's what they've trained to do, and they're proud of it.
We take our mission very seriously. We really care about it. We care a lot about it. It's good for morale. Here of our pilots, it's also something that's very unique about helicopter pilots. As being in the military and your training and constantly readiness to go to war, it's also is something very unique in the helo community, where you're always can be called on to do some type of whether it be disaster relief, and we do take it very seriously and care very much for the results. If you're out there, we want to get you.
When we come back, you'll find out about a delicate rescue operation in the North Arabian Sea, and more on what it's like searching for survivors lost at sea. Stay with us. Initiates a search and rescue operation, there's more to it than just that. There are certain procedures that HC-5 must comply with, as SAR Officer Lieutenant Scott White explains.
For us to go on a search and rescue mission, first of all, we need our commanding officer's approval. Then, once we have that, if it's a civilian SAR, then we need the commanding officer's approval of the Naval Air Station itself. Once we have that, during working hours, we're on a 15-minute alert. And we can usually respond within that 15 minutes and be on scene within 20 minutes if it's local. As far as during non-working hours, we're on an hour alert. And generally speaking, even on weekends, we can have everybody here and in the air within an hour. That response time itself can generally help the Coast Guard, especially in the case where there's a swimmer over the reef.
In effect, the SAR operation is a joint effort between HC-5 and the Coast Guard. Each knows its role and its importance to the overall success of the operation. Consequently, each move is carefully calculated.
The Coast Guard comes up with what they call a datum point, which is generally where they have determined the swimmer to be. As we go through the search, what we'll do is generally for a swimmer that is the first search phase, we'll do what we call a parallel search pattern, which means going along the coastline back and forth approximately 200 to 400 feet with approximately 1/8 mile track spacing. That's been found to be the most successful. Now, in the case of an overdue vessel, say coming back from Rhoda to the boat basin, what we would do is we would probably fly that track line first and then do what we call a track line search. So there's a number of different methods that we can use. We make recommendations to the Coast Guard, they make recommendations to us, and hopefully between the two of us we'll come up with the vessel or swimmer.
Searching for survivors is serious business. Most of the time it means a life is on the line, and so there's nothing left to mere chance. Even how to scan for a swimmer, there is a right and a wrong way. The rescuers are taught
to make sure that when they're searching, especially on the water, to make sure they focus as they scan out. And what they'll do is they'll start in close to the helicopter and take points along a scan out away from the helicopter. And what we determine is how far we want them to look out. With an 1/8 mile track spacing for, say, one swimmer in the water with no signaling devices, it's going to be pretty short. That way they can concentrate on a small area, and hopefully by focusing on the top of the water, they will see that. If you don't focus, if you scan your eyes across the top of the water, chances are you're going to miss a survivor. In the case of a vessel, usually we'll fly a little higher and a little faster, because boats are a lot easier to spot, obviously. Most boats hopefully have an international orange display of some sort. And generally with vessels, we have a much better idea exactly where they are.
For every successful rescue, there is an equal chance of failure. Failure in the sense that the person or persons lost at sea are never found. It is a grim fact inherent to the job. Still, though, the rescuers must go out, always hoping that the survivor will remain visible long enough for them to spot him. Even one rescue makes it all worthwhile. What more when you're able to save 21 lives? Such was the case about 1.5 years ago while HC-5 was on duty in the North Arabian Sea. Commander Howie Frankenfield and Petty Officer Grant Poucher were part of the crew involved in the tricky rescue operation. They recall the event vividly.
We were out in the middle of the North Arabian Sea during our regular deployment cycle, and we got word that there was a sinking Kuwaiti cargo vessel out there. It was called the Human El Kulab. It was from Kuwait, and it was carrying about 700 water buffalo from India up to Kuwait. Well, they one time they took a big roll, and all the water buffalo shifted from one side to the other, and they could not get the water buffalo back evenly spread out in the ship again, and the ship started listing to one side and then started sinking, started taking on water. Well, they radioed for help, and one of the ships that was sent to help get the people off it was the San Jose, and the HC-5 Det 1 at that time with our two H-46 helicopters.
But we came over to the site, and cattle were hanging out over the guardrails and like below decks, and like the waves would hit and they'd be dunked under the water and they'd come back up, and there's a couple swimming around. But the crew was all up on the top, like it was like slanted big time, and they're up all on the rail ready to get rescued. They're all waving to us and stuff. And so we came around, hovered, and the booms and everything were getting real close to the helo, so we couldn't do a low hover. We just had to stay pretty high and then get the horse collar to them real fast, and then come back around in the pattern because the boat was swinging up and trying to get, coming at the helo, and the people that were coming up on the cable, the booms were coming at them, so we had to get clear. So we did 11 horse, racetrack patterns, picked the person up, got them in the helo. These were mostly Korean people, and they're really, I was surprised how agile they were. They were great, man. They got in the horse collar real fast and had them up. I did our 11 packs, our 11 people we got up, rescued them, and then we came back to the San Jose and went into medical, and they're all treated.
So probably within about 20 minutes or so, we had hoisted 21 people up and actually saved their lives, because the ship would have gone down, and it was too rough. For there was other boats around there, some other Navy vessels around there, and it was too rough to put boats in the water. So I don't know how they would have got those people off of the ship if it hadn't been for the helicopters that we had out there to hoist those people off that ship. We then took them back to our ship, the San Jose, and they took them into Masira, Oman, and took the people home from there.
They got on the helo, we got them buckled into the seat, and they're all smiles and patting us on the back and everything. It was, it's good.
How does that make you feel?
Real good. It was worthwhile. It was, the adrenaline was flowing throughout the whole movement, and when we got on board, flying back to the ship, it was real relieved.
Well, we were very glad about this. So we'd been working real hard about that time of the year. We were the only detachment out there to support the battle group at that time, and we had been doing a lot of work, and we were all kind of tired. But after we got back and we realized what we'd done, and we realized we had saved 21 people's lives, the crew was pretty happy about the whole experience, and so was the crew of the San Jose, also the ship's crew.
HC-5 has been involved in numerous search and rescue operations since coming here, not to mention its medevac operations. But still, the squadron is always looking to improve itself. Recently, they've begun training on a new and more difficult capability, one which they believe could prove very important to the fleet. Once again, SAR Officer Lieutenant Scott White explains.
What we're doing here at the squadron is we're in the process of training all the pilots to do that mission. What we'll do is generally go over Tuman Bay, Agana Bay, or Pago Bay, and we'll drop a smoke in the water. We've had a few calls that people think that's a burning boat, and they'll call the Coast Guard, and we appreciate that. Generally, we call the Coast Guard before we do those training evolutions. The night rescue scenario itself is probably the most demanding helicopter pilot scenario there is. A misconception along those lines is that we're just looking out the window down at the water, and it's a very, very easy visual reference. When actually, you're flying strictly by instruments, and if you do look out the window, chances are it's going to make you feel like you're upside down. The helicopters, our helicopters have a system incorporated, which we call the coupled Doppler. And what that does is that tries to help the pilots maintain a steady hover over the water. There's minimal pilot input. However, there's still quite a bit of instrument scan that needs to be adhered to. It also incorporates the capability for the air crewman in the back to take a small amount of control of the helicopter to position it over the swimmer. It's really an exciting evolution, and we've been working hard on that for about the past year now.